Hello there, and good day to you. This is Brandon Tilt here on healing. It's been a while since I've done this, so welcome to my podcast where I like to explore the topic of healing, more broadly speaking. Sometimes taking maybe some perspective from my experience counseling over the last about year and a half now. I've had my practice running, and my about 3 years of coaching in private practice. But also modestly looking at my life and offering my personal reflections from my journey of going to therapy and living a life that's dedicated to my growth and my inner work, right? Because going to therapy is one thing, having a certification is another thing, but actually doing the inner work, actually deciding that you're motivated and you're ready to make some changes in your life and have those changes ripple out into those you love, right? Into the relationships that you care about. It's a big decision, right? And this podcast is hopefully helping you more readily and consistently show up in your life, finding ways to maybe apply practical tips or takeaways, but at the same time, hopefully reaching some kind of clarity around something that you're trying to figure out related to healing. And that's my purpose, that's my intention here. Right now I'm looking at a gorgeous view of the lower mainland from atop Burke Mountain. Some might know the spot. Up Burke Mountain, there's a bench that gives you a beautiful view where you're overlooking Coquitlam and Vancouver, and you can see all the way off into the islands. It's the one of the views that's adjacent to the Coquitlam Lake viewpoint. I didn't make it that far today, but I'm loving this spot, so I sat down and started to record my podcast. Yeah, so today I'm feeling very, very grateful and very blessed. Feeling like my life is kind of like a dream sometimes, and other times it's feeling like a nightmare. It's feeling like I'm right back in the deepest depth of my trauma. And then most of the time it's somewhere in between. I don't feel like I live a dreamlike life. Like I don't live where there's a lot of, I guess like a room for fantasy. That's not entirely true, but it feels like ever since I've stopped using psychedelics, I'm so rooted in reality. And just makes me kind of miss what it was like to have my head in the clouds, you know? And a meditation session with LSD or a meditation session after you smoked weed could be such a profound and deep experience. You know, you could go so deep within yourself. And I'm grateful for those experiences, right? They were very healing for me, but also acknowledging that when I'm living life sober, right? When I'm living life and choosing to really confront the reality that's in front of me, yeah, it's much more difficult to dive into those types of worlds. And it requires a lot more patience. It requires a lot more maybe preparation. That chipmunk is really distracting me. I hope it goes away. You know, I'm feeling like I'm at a very pivotal point in my therapeutic journey. As a client, let's just say, maybe as a counselor as well, but I started to really take stock on, like, what am I actually doing? What am I working towards? What kind of parts do I want to hopefully unburden at some point in my journey? What am I ready to let go of? Maybe because I've been holding on to a lot of anger and maybe judgment, some might say, and resentment. There were parts that were kind of holding on just by a thread, you know? But they were still having quite a firm grip on me, right? And I had to decide at some point if I wanted to, I could have kept on enabling those parts of me to influence my life. And I had to kind of decide that it was time to let go. It was time to acknowledge that I want something different. Is that a chipmunk or a bird? I can't. Anyway, it feels like wow, this view in front of me is so beautiful. But it feels like I'm just trying to allow myself to truly be happy. Not look at healing like a distraction, not look at it like it's another mountain that I need to somehow conquer or can conquer. I feel like I've really dug deep into some trauma, and I'm very grateful to ayahuasca and the ceremonies I've sat in. Very grateful to the courage that I've demonstrated in those ceremonies, in sitting with some really, really dark feelings and some really, really unsettling experiences. And also knowing that I don't need that level of rubbing up against my trauma in such a raw way. I don't need that every day, or I don't need that in order to heal, or in order to feel like I'm moving towards my healing goals or my therapeutic goals. And I think there was a bit of a prolonged response to my experiences in South America. You know, if any of you are familiar with complex trauma, it's kind of like, feels like you're slowly wading through an experience, even if it's seemingly past, but it feels like you're still slowly wading through it for sometimes years. And I think there were experiences that I was wading through with my healing galoshes, my boots. I was slowly wading through experiences that were very difficult while I was in school for counseling. And at some point, I went a cycle deeper, and in ceremony, I unlocked something else that I felt needed to be, like, the light needed to be shone on. And then through the course of those next couple of years, it was just wading into that experience and not pushing too far. It feels like if you push too hard or push too far, well, in my experience, the protector parts kind of just knock you out of the driver's seat and you're back into some form of coping, which is usually unhealthy, right? There's a firefighter that's distracting or numbing. And you've essentially lost trust. You've lost the trust that you've built with the protector parts. That's why I find not going too slowly in whatever healing process you're engaged in, but also not going past that threshold where it kind of snaps back on you, right? If you go just deep enough, I'm talking about the wading, you go just deep enough that you don't sink, and then you don't fall into a sinkhole, but you don't sink, but you're still wading a little deeper, a little deeper, a little deeper, and then you kind of come out a bit, you see how you're feeling, you see where are you, what's what. That feels like that's the way I've been doing it, and it's been working for me, where I wade deep, but only as deep as I know I can kind of pull myself out of. And that also means you wade as deep as your support network is able of pulling you out of too, right? Like, it's not a solo journey. You can most certainly create a strong support network and then wade a little deeper, because you have that safety net in place, and maybe someone to guide you along. I'm not sure if this looks any different, but I'm just, like, my eyes are adjusting so I can kind of, like, I'm kind of looking into the sun. It's not a good idea, but it's also starting to set. But my eyes are adjusting and I can see all these really beautiful views, but the phone can't. So I feel like I'm working on healing my relationship to anger, like most men are. And I still notice myself being quite snappy. But I catch myself. I catch myself being snappy. And I'm really proud of how I show up in conflict, which I feel, it's interesting, because I still feel like I have that internal voice that's kind of like, fuck this, grr, there's still anger. But I don't project it out onto others. And when I do feel like I need to advocate for myself, I'm well within my I don't want to say comfort zone, but I'm well within my right. Like, I know where that line exists, and I know how to advocate for myself, and I don't back down. And at the same time, I don't project anger onto others most of the time. I'm not perfect, but I think I've been getting a lot better. And thinking back to when I was talking about things that pissed me off a lot when I was in therapy with my counselor, I was just, there was something about not analyzing it and not needing to figure out the anger, even though there is a part of me that wants to figure out the anger. And it feels like the only way to truly let go of the anger is to just fully understand it, right? Like, there's going to be an aha moment and all of it's just going to go away. But that's not been, from my experience, that's not the case. That's not how anger has worked for me. It's just been like certain phrases that I feel like I need to speak, I need to be witnessed in, even just by one person. But in some shape or form, there was just never a readiness or a willingness to speak those words. And they're like core truths, I suppose. They're kind of like things I wish I could have said when I was a child, or I wish I could have said in moments where I felt powerless. And once they're vocalized, it kind of rings out into my reality, like it starts to echo out into my being. And the way that radiates outward, it really impacts the internal system, right? There's a lot of parts that feel the wave of that, like, fully expressed anger, in its totality, not being held back, not being kind of, I'm not pulling my punches with the expression. I'm just chilling, taking some videos of this, like the way the sun's going over the ridge. So if you hear that noise, you're hearing camera noises, I'm not going to edit them out, but I'm watching this beautiful sunset and the sun's going over the ridge, and I'm just trying to capture some videos as it's going over the ridge. No, but like, anger is one of those things that it's so poisonous, right? It is a force for change. It is a healthy thing. To be angry isn't poisonous, but it seeps into your internal system, and it really hurts you. It really hurts you from within. And I'm not going to pretend I understand each individual situation. I can just speak from my experience. But for me, it creates these narratives, right? It creates that person, or, oh, I'm not this, or my world is fucked up, or like it's like these unspoken little stories, right? These little stories that I feel, and then those feelings, when unexpressed, become kind of like little belief systems, little quote unquote truths about the world around me. And maybe there's a need there, right? If I want to get clear on that need, I can do that. But in all honesty, oftentimes it's just anger that doesn't have anywhere to go, energy that feels like it's getting bottled up, that gets stuck in my body, that gets, there's like a loop that's playing out that in all honesty is kind of useless. Like, some of the interactions, to get another photo here. It's just a really cool sunbeam going on. Some of the interactions I have with my parts, like, I don't know if any of you have done much IFS, but if you do have certain interactions with like protector parts that are really extreme, they have very extreme thinking, they're all or nothing. They feel like they're so justified and so right. And by the way, they feel that way for a reason, right? There was a time where you needed to be so right, where it made the most sense. In IFS, I've read a lot about shame in IFS, and I've learned how oftentimes there was a time where that part needed to change the narrative from this situation that's outside your control, that maybe is just something you don't understand as a child, and you kind of switch things around so it becomes about, well, often it becomes a shame narrative. It becomes, I am bad. It's like, why doesn't my dad give me the emotional care that I know I deserve on a deeper level, right? Why does my mom show up in certain times when I need her? It's kind of a selfish thought, because like, they're busy, they're parents, they have lives, they have jobs, they have other kids, maybe, if you have siblings, but you're like, oh, okay, they're not here because I'm not worthy of their love, or it could just be a series of different shame-based narratives that play out. And this is what I mean, is like, you catch these loops at a certain time when you're really able to witness them, and it surprises you. Well, not that surprising, but it can be kind of baffling. You're like, wow, I can't believe I've internalized that phrase, that mantra, that pain-based response. And it plays and repeat. It cycles onward. It's really quite poisonous to the internal system. It's quite poisonous to your cells. It's painful. All right, last photo noises, I swear. Might just edit them out, but if I don't, whatever. Yeah, so I mean, working with anger was one of the things that opened me up to working with my shame more consistently, without it just like feeling like it's this like big overwhelming thing that's like, I'll go there and then another part will come online and just like completely redirect me. I'll be wanting to focus on the thing that I've been building up to finally feeling safe to talk about, right? Could be from my past, could be a relationship, right? It could be something I feel very embarrassed about. And then, the part's like, nope. Last minute just kind of switches things up. And all of a sudden it's about something that's like completely irrelevant in a way. Like it's just like something that's more surface level. And yeah, I had to build the trust within my internal system where it's like, okay, like we're able to safely show up in this, and we're going to do the aftercare. And we've talked with and advocated for, what we need, but we've talked with the counselor, we've talked with the therapist, and we've advocated for what we need, and we've created that safe container. We've collaboratively created that trust, and it doesn't have to be perfect, but it's safe. And that's where I think I've really created a good relationship in that container. And I also feel like it's required a lot of inching towards building real trust and having it be embodied in those sessions. And it takes time. Like you can't rush. You cannot rush. You cannot rush doing IFS. You cannot rush doing deep inner work, especially around your core traumas. You cannot rush building a strong therapeutic relationship as much as you might try. You can offload all your trauma. You can let the therapist know like outright, like this is what I need, this is how I work, this is how I roll, this is what's going on here. And that might be very helpful, actually. But at the same time, you need to be patient, and oftentimes you got to slow down. You got to go at the speed of the exile that's running the show, which is the most vulnerable part of you. And it takes a lot of self-awareness. It takes a tremendous amount of self-awareness to really slow down and notice if you're honoring the exile that's present in the space. And that could be a therapy space, that could be a group container, that could just be you sitting in a meditation. Maybe you're doing some IFS, I don't know. But it takes a tremendous amount of self-awareness to really just slow down and notice if you're honoring the exile. And oftentimes that looks like slowing down in your life in general. If we think about the consumer-based, capitalistic society we're living in, a post-colonial nightmare world, your protector part is probably running the show. If you're just checking in and seeing if your protector part's running the show, because if your protector part's running the show, it's not looking out for your exiles in the best way. It's not leading from self-energy. It's not leading from compassion. It's not connected to all the parts. It's in many ways not able to really see things clearly. And when you see things clearly, when you understand what your entire system needs, and you're able to really show up with compassion and courage, having the courage to maybe stand up to a protector part, maybe the courage to make decisions in your life that are scary to make, then you're advocating on behalf of the exiled parts of you that need that, right? It's like the child self. When you were a child, you needed someone to advocate for you. You need someone to stand up for you. You need someone to offer you something, or even check in and ask. And you didn't get that, maybe. In many cases, we didn't. And now, as your adult self, when you're in self-energy, when you're self-led, when you're not seeing things through the lens of the wounded protector part, you're able to truly understand the needs of your exiled parts, and you're able to offer them that, not just in the moments that you're doing IFS or the moments that you're in a therapy container, you're able to consistently do that every day as much as humanly possible. And remember, the exiled parts are so beautiful and playful. They're so connected to spirit. They're so rich in their experience of this world. And to have them fulfilled and supported, it creates a really beautiful existence. It really does. It really does create a world. It really changes the way you view the world. It really changes the way you engage with the world. It changes the way you show up in a loving romantic relationship or in loving connection to your family or friends. They have the gifts. And if you are able to share those gifts with those that you love, it's a really powerful and beautiful experience. So I invite you to get curious about all of what I've shared today, really. But really just getting curious about the healing journey. And if you're approaching therapy with intention, it's kind of like, what are you moving towards? And are you honoring all the parts in your system? Are you honoring mainly the protector parts at first because you need to? Or are you moving towards honoring the exiles? And how does your therapist or your friends or family play into that too, right? You have to consider, like I said, with the wading in. And I use the analogy of wading into mud. Maybe you're wading into water too, right? Because fishing waders. But yeah, anyway. How does your support network come into play? Does that allow you to go a little deeper? Are you feeling like your support network isn't really as strong right now? So maybe when you wade, you don't wade as deep, and you know where that threshold exists, right? So I'm getting kind of cold, but I'm looking at a beautiful view in front of me, and I feel like it's time to descend. It's time to head back down the mountain. And I hope whoever you are and wherever you're at, and whatever life's presenting to you, you're able to just keep on considering love. Really just love, right? Keep on considering how you can connect to love. And you'll find a way. We all find the way. Thank you for joining me atop the mountain, this beautiful sunset. Take care. Are you making space for that self, that deeper sense of self to shine through? If you'd be interested in working with me one-on-one, please reach out through featheroflightcounseling@outlook.com. Aside from that, a heartfelt thank you for being a friend. Take care.